shit's going down at the Federal Reserve. This is going to get ugly. I'm going to talk about that at the end of the video. This is so bad. I'm also going to talk about what Howard Lutnick said yesterday and how he's so full of shit. But I'm going to start off by recapping yesterday's video. Yesterday I was talking about this house in Old East Village, and I was saying how this middle-class house from 100 years ago, 1880 to be exact, was affordable to the regular middle-class to lower middle-class person. And now it's about 800 grand. So people had questions and concerns about how I arrived at that number, so let's break it down. The damages were $550,000. And people rightly said that would include contents, right? So let's give about 100 grand for the contents. Does $450,000 cover the cost of the house and the property? No. Now remember, this is estimated damages, okay? So this isn't a payout from the insurance company, but is $450 going to cover the entire property? No. So the damages have to be to the house and the contents. $550 for the house and contents. And again, let's say 100 grand for contents. I'm being generous. First thing that came up was the size of the house. The house is 1,600 square feet plus. I went and measured it. So it's an 800 square foot footprint, but as you can see, it's 2 stories. That makes it 16. And there's a 130 square foot addition on the back. That makes it 1,730 square feet. On the low end of building costs, $225 a square foot. That brings you to almost 400 grand. On the high end, you're a little over 500 grand. So somewhere in the middle, 450, that seems reasonable. And as I said yesterday, the lot is 250 by itself, easy. So 250 plus 450, that's 700 grand. Remember, it's a general estimate. There's things in there they didn't account for, like development fees and stuff like that. Development fees are about 50 grand. Now, whether the cost to build a place like this, land and structure, is 650 or 700,000 or 800,000, the point is still valid. In 1880, this was attainable for the middle class or lower middle class person. And now it is not, because you aren't getting paid. All right, let's go over some bullshit from Howard Lutnick. Man, you know, I get the comments still from people who support this administration. They're compulsive liars, and everything that's printed about them shows how they lie. In this story here, like, the nonsense is rampant. U.S. Commerce Secretary dismisses question that free trade with Canada is dead. Lutnick says it's silly to say free trade is dead because a substantial amount of Canadian goods enter the U.S. tariff-free under the current North American free trade deal. The same is true coming into Canada. Just remember, if it goes free trade into the U.S., it's coming free trade into Canada. In fact, 75% of all goods, duty-free. The RBC says it was 79% in January 2025, and that increased to 89% in April. So almost everything duty-free. And yet, Canada is not open to us. They need to open their market. So we have a free trade deal. 90% of products go back and forth, tariff-free. But our market is not open because of the free trade deal that this administration negotiated the first time. Sure. I can smell the stench of bullshit from here. All right, speaking of bullshit, check this out. Jerome Powell has been referred to the Department of Justice for criminal charges for perjury related to his $2.5 billion renovation to the Federal Reserve building. His $2.5 billion renovation. Yeah, okay. Oh, by the way, let's not talk about this stuff either, though, eh? Let's not talk about these things. It's very convenient timing, but let's just talk about this renovation. So yeah, the Federal Reserve building is in grave need of renovation, and the renovations are going to cost $2.5 billion. Why? Well, first up, the building is built on a swamp. Ironically fitting. The initial estimate was $1.9 billion that was approved. Why is it so expensive? Because it's built on a swamp and it's extensive. It's an extensive renovation. Building costs have increased recently. It's increased for everyone everywhere. And the rehab has climbed more than 30% since 2023, bringing $1.9 billion plus 30% to $2.5 billion. So legit, it's $2.5 billion. Why? Because it was $1.9 billion at the beginning. Everyone approved of that. There's been 30% cost increases in construction, and that brings you to $2.5 billion. This is not at all an illegal and insidious way to do something that is illegal in order to cover up something that is illegal. Yeah, the Trump administration cannot fire Jerome Powell, but if he is brought up on criminal charges for perjury, he will be relieved of duties. How convenient! We don't have to illegally fire him at all. At the same time, people will talk about that and not talk about these files. You know, the files that all of a sudden don't exist anymore. The files that were all a Democrat conspiracy. The files that the Trump administration were certain would incriminate the Clintons until they saw the files. And now the files don't exist anymore. That's interesting. That will completely erode any faith anyone has in the United States and their economy. Shit will go sideways fast.